Hey everyone, my name is Beth Murphy. I make different videos. I'm an INFJ, so I have a playlist for that. And I'm going to be working on some other things based on my interests. Because if you know about this archetype, I feel like I'm the quintessential one because I have a degree in philosophical science. This is always how I've been. I speak in analogies, I see things in patterns. I have a spiritual nature, and it's just easy for me. It's just easy for me to see where people are off the path of what they say they want. That's it. That's how I'm looking at people. There's no right or wrong. There's just opinions, and to me, there is accuracy if you're on the way to what you say you want, or you're off the path. So that's kind of the common theme within who I am as a person. And the INFJ stuff comes in because I have been studying people my entire life. That's what most of us are doing. Kind of storing it in our data bank, our unconscious data bank. And then what we find is when we're with people, we feel like we know the answers because we've been keeping score of everything and everyone. And the older that you get, the more experience you have. So at 45, I feel pretty confident in my abilities. So I wanted to share with you an important story because it's a story of a lot of people right now. People are kind of waking up, which means they're being more thoughtful. They are seeing more outside of themselves and consequences for others rather than just how things will relate back to themselves. So there's a lot of good coming out of it. I think I should do a lot of videos on empathy and people that resonate with the label of empath because I don't see it as a weakness. But I've lived it enough to know in the past that I remember how it feels if you feel like you're taking it all in. So I am compassionate to that. I have had that, but so this is a story about someone I spent time with recently, and I thought, her story is pretty classic, and somebody else can benefit from this. The advice that I gave her, which I will take you through the story, and you'll have the same advice. I know that she'll get it when she's ready. But if I put it down on record, then, obviously other people can be drawn to this and they will get it in their own time. So who knows? Maybe your time is today. But anyway, I feel it's deserved of a record. So the woman that I'm talking about, now these notes, they're really for me. And as you can see, I don't put a lot of expertise. Well, I don't have any expertise. They're pretty crude, but that's just my way. You can think of me as a podcast. It's very personal. So these are my graphs. So my friend, again, I consider her an empath. She's giving all her life, taking in everything around her, the same way I do as an INFJ, but I don't think she's my type. I don't think she's that type. Just by the way her brain doesn't calculate things like mine does. I hadn't seen her in about 8 or 9 months. Usually I would have seen her every few months. But I stopped working hard to make that happen, and it wasn't a bad thing. It's just I take care of myself, It's part of my nature to look after everyone, but boundaries are good for people because it helps them be healthy. So I'll reach and I'll check on people to a point, and I just kind of felt like stop checking on her Because usually when I visit with her, she's close enough to be like a family member, so I do put in extra time and effort. And when I invite her over, I make it nice for her and listen to her troubles and stuff. And usually I can spin her back around to a better viewpoint. And I can tell by her eyes how she's receiving me. You know, she'll usually tear up or something when I strike a chord. But I hadn't felt like doing that. You know, I got busy doing my own things. So by the time I ended up spending time with her, I would check on her, and it was always work or family. She takes care of people like a nurse, a family member, and she also works as an aide. So this is her nature to care for everyone. And that was kind of always the reply. She's busy and work. So we finally did get together, and she starts telling me about these ailments. And trying to she was reliving it by telling me, I don't know if you do this and you're not aware, or you know someone that does this and you would like them not to, because that's the story for me and my friend. I would like her not to do this because it hurts her. So she is very invested in telling the story from a victim's point of view about her ailments, showing me photos of her herself. It manifests as, let's say, blood clots. So there were some ugly photos she was eager to show me. Really, really reliving it. The needles and this and that. Like, why are you doing this? Stop. Just stop talking. And she got hurt and offended, obviously. So I had to explain to her what I'm going to explain to you guys. What she had been doing, and I'd seen her do this for decades. She lives by default. And for her, what that means is she's living according to whatever beliefs that she has in her unconscious. Now, she grew up as an abused child, so unfortunately, it's normal for her to put her needs on the back burner, take care of others at her own expense. And how I've perceived her all this time, she seems to always have an ailment, always an affliction. And I know that they're quote unquote real, you know, they're diagnosis or there are tests and there are surgeries and whatnot, but it's like the self-worth isn't there to learn to not attract these things and to live that way. And I'm going to explain, hopefully more to your satisfaction, by showing you what I showed her. Now, she was telling me about a particular recent affliction, okay? And I'm calling that the storm. Because I was trying to get her to not be so invested in every detail and reliving the story and telling me about the hospital visits and just so into it, the storm. Well, she's like, how do I ignore it when I have to go get treatments and I have to do this and that? And I said, what I want you to see is what came before the storm. A bunch of little choices led to the storm. Because this is always the story of her. She doesn't see it because she's not calculating and keeping score like my brain is wired to do. She's living it. So to her, it just probably feels like she's getting pummeled all the time. But I can see the pattern. She makes little choices that are not good for her that turn into the storm. The storm, sometimes it looks like a bad marriage. Sometimes it looks like poor health. It might look like a job loss or just you're unhappy at work. It's always the same story. To me, it has the same energy pattern. It doesn't really matter what you call the little circumstances. I just want her to see that these little choices make the storm, and then throughout the years, the storm has changed names, it's just changed how it's manifested. It really doesn't matter. But what matters is these little choices. So try to get her to at least be aware that before this came, there were these little choices. And for her, being taking it back to the empath, what she's done is gotten used to worrying about everybody else. Okay? And this is a pie graph of her life. She has, because of her self-worth issues from the past, they're unconscious, but, like I said, she was legitimately abused, so she has a different belief about what she deserves. That's why, as a counselor, it's my job to show you who you can be if you thought of yourself differently. Like, I'm doing that for you, and then I help you jump up so you can see what I see in you. So, but this is what she's become comfortable with for all the decades I've known her. She's like a quarter okay, and then the rest of the time it's just grinding her teeth, getting through life, just grinning and bearing it, just push every day. I got to do this. I got to take this person here. I have to take this one to the doctors. Literally it seems like every day almost. Say 5 out of 7 days. She's taken somebody to a doctor who's had their own afflictions. It's just a pattern. And taking a bad job. That's another choice, where you're getting minimum wage or settling at this lower living, and you wonder why it becomes this storm. So her question was, well, how do I get out of this pie graph about worrying about these things and going to the appointments and all that if my life is this storm, which happens to be poor health for this particular storm? And the answer is, again, becoming aware that you're doing it. Otherwise, it's just unconscious. You're just living in default, repeating those unconscious patterns, your beliefs about your worth, and not being aware during your day about these little choices, because they are going to develop into something bigger. And this is actually how we heal. I know it looks crappy and it feels crappy when you're living it, but you haven't noticed yet. If you're making these poor choices that are sub-living, you haven't noticed yet. So doesn't it kind of have to get bigger for you to notice? People that are, maybe they're alcoholics, they call that hitting bottom. And then they can go up. But it's going to get as bad as it's going to get until it gets your attention. Okay? It's really important. So she has a legitimate question. Well, now how do I live different? How do I live a different pie graph if this is my life? Okay, great question. So here's the answer. Start a new way of being. A new way of being now. Okay? So this would be the new pie graph. She spends most of the time like this. So how would she do that? Well, one example is when I got together with her, don't whip out the phone and show me your ailments and relive the needles and the treatments, and don't do that. You have to love yourself in every moment you possibly can. Think about if you were caring for another person, a child or anyone that you care about. Would you wake them up in the morning, feed them breakfast, and then start talking about the day before, about how it felt when the nurse came and gave you this, or this hurt, or the awfulness of something? Or no, you would not do that to that person, so don't do it to you. So what would that look like? Well, during our meeting, we had a meal together, so we had a couple hours to just sit and share. It came up in conversation, because I'm very lighthearted and pretty happy and well adjusted, I talk at this higher elevation. So when you're with someone, it's kind of an exchange of energy. So in other words, I'm going to influence her and scoop her up, and I'm going to get her on a little bit of a higher note, okay? And this is always what I would do when we were together, like I said earlier, when she would come, and I would see her a little more often, so she wouldn't be so off track. But I sweep her up in my current of happiness. So during that meeting that we had, she mentioned something that was inspirational to her, the equivalent of meditating and things like that. And she seemed happy and peaceful. I said, listen, that's what I'm saying. Talk about that. All that effort that you just put when we sat down and showed me the bruises and told me in excruciating detail how your day was when you felt sick. Don't talk about that. You could have spent that time talking about that good feeling that you had when you felt like you were being led to meditations and you felt like there was people on the other side helping you. So I don't know who's listening to this video, but you can think of that however you wish, obviously, that somebody might be over there guiding you, whether it's an angel or your higher self or God or whomever, a dead person that loves you. That's what she was saying in this example. But it gave her peace and happiness. So the point is, you want to make that your new pie graph. I said, you had this hour or so with me. Had you spent 3/4 of it talking about what makes you feel good, making that your focus, then that pie graph is what makes the choices. Because you're feeling better. You spend more time doing that, focus on what makes you feel good and better, your choices are going to be good and better. You see? It's really important because look what happens. Those choices are going to get carried through. So you might as well make them the most positive choices you can so you don't wind up with this. This is the lower end of the spectrum where all the bad stuff is. Bad marriage, poor health, job loss. Okay? So it's really important not to live unconsciously by default like she was. Because she does have this healing in the past to do. So your thoughts matter, especially when you're an empath. Because you're busy taking in everyone else's feelings and you're most likely a compassionate person. You want to save them. But guess what? If you get sick, who's going to save them when you're gone? Obviously, right? This is what we say when we give the analogy of the mom in the airplane when the oxygen mask drops. What does she do? Does she put it on the child that needs air immediately? No. She puts that on herself. So you have to get to that place where you're safe and you're full before you can be of assistance to others. So I hope I've explained about the importance of being a little more conscious of where your energy's going and understanding that things may be happening to you, but it doesn't mean you're a victim of it. You still get to control your brain. You still get to find something in your life that makes you feel better, and that's all up to you. And it's going to come down to loving yourself and understanding that you're worth it. You're worth the time. Just like I gave you that example, if you were caring for a child and a child was going through something difficult, you're not going to shake them on the shoulder and remind them of that all day. You're not going to beat them up about it or make them feel guilty, or you're going to love them and you're going to let them come to their own understandings and be supportive, not knock them down. And you can start a new way of being right now. So, hopefully I made an impact on my friend. And when she's ready, she'll do it. But for that moment, I was able to make her happy because she could see what I saw in her and her potential. Because that's how I would treat her if I was in charge of her thoughts. Be doing 3/4 of this. All right? I don't know. I hope that was helpful. You can always ask me something to clarify in the comments. All right? Thanks for hanging out with me. Talk to you soon.